All right, what's going on, y'all? So today we're going to talk about bodybuilding versus power building. This has been a question I've been getting a lot over the last week since I've started my functional power building split. People have been wanting to know why I'm doing this, what are the differences between the two. You know, me going from high intensity bodybuilding over the last several years to power building now, kind of the benefits of both and all that. And so that's what we're going to get into today. Today I'm going to tell you, what are the differences between specifically high intensity bodybuilding and then power building. The benefits of each, and then how to set up each if you wanted to do more bodybuilding or if you wanted to do more power building. And then I'm also going to give you at the end my personal reasons on why I'm training the way I am now, both on a physical level, physical reasons, and then also more on the spiritual side as well, because that is part of it. So first, let's go ahead and get into talking about what is bodybuilding versus what is power building. So the most simple way to think about this is put this on a spectrum. And on one side of the spectrum, you have powerlifting, and on the other side of the spectrum, you have bodybuilding. There's definitely overlap in the two a little bit, but to keep this simple, just think about this as a linear spectrum. So on one side of the spectrum, you have powerlifting. Now, with powerlifting, the goal is not a physical look or anything like that. It's purely performance-based, typically for competitions. Some people don't compete in it. Some people are just trying to, max out the lifts, but it's specifically trying to get better at squat, bench, and deadlift, the three main lifts. And so, for most people, it's very competition-based and all of that, but it's not based off of a look. On the other end of the spectrum, you have bodybuilding. Bodybuilding typically also is competition related, even though it doesn't have to be. People can just train that style, and they are specifically going for the look. So this is where a lot of times performance, while it matters, isn't really part of the goal. So with that, you have on one end, then within bodybuilding, you have a spectrum. On one end of the spectrum, you have high intensity or a high volume bodybuilding, which is more like what Arnold and like Jay Cutler, those guys did, where it's not really tied at all to strength. Not saying they weren't strong in their own regard, but it's not really tied to strength. It's more pushing volume, getting a pump, all of that. And then on the other side of the spectrum of bodybuilding, you have high intensity bodybuilding, which is typically lower volume. This is more of the Mike Mentzer approach, Dorian Yates approach. And a lot of the pros now, a lot of them have opted to go more towards high intensity, which what comes with high intensity is you do get some strength benefits. You're not going to be as strong on the three main lifts as like a power lifter, but you are going to absolutely be stronger than just a high volume bodybuilder. And what happens a lot of times from this is it does create a different look. So we're going to get into the benefits of both in a second. But a high intensity bodybuilder a lot of times has slightly different look and muscle quality than a high volume bodybuilder. So to keep it simple today, we're going to be talking about the difference between power building, which is, on the spectrum, compared to high intensity bodybuilding. I'm not going to really be including high volume bodybuilding in here. It's going to be more talking about high intensity, a little bit lower volume bodybuilding, since that's frankly what I've done over the last 4 to 6 years. So on the spectrum, you got powerlifting on this side, you got bodybuilding on this side. Power building falls somewhat in the middle of this, and it can fall anywhere on the spectrum depending on what the goals are. If the goals are more trying to get strength with the three lifts, but still incorporate some level of building muscle mass, you're going to be on this side of the spectrum, but it's still very much power building. If you're going to have the focus be more on building muscle mass, but you still want to really focus on gaining strength at the same time, you're going to be a little bit closer on this side of the spectrum, closer to bodybuilding. But what power building is essentially you're trying to get stronger at the same time as putting on muscle. Where power building or powerlifting, you're not really trying to have the focus of putting on muscle. You absolutely still will, but that's not the focus. The focus is the strength aspect. Bodybuilding, you're really just trying to put on muscle without really caring about the strength aspect, even though you'll get stronger. Power building, your goal intentionally is kind of both at the same time. But with that, the downside, if you want to say, to power building is, for the most part, you're probably not going to, it's kind of the jack of all trades is not the master of one. You're You're not going to max out your potential in bodybuilding, and you're also not going to max out your potential in powerlifting doing power building. But you're trying to get kind of a hybrid approach, getting some of the benefits of both. So first off, let's go ahead and talk about, high intensity bodybuilding. So this is what I've done over the last several years. This is where, a lot of times you'll see on a movement, you'll have like a top set, you'll do your warm-up sets, then you'll have a top set, which is your heaviest working set, and then you'll have a back off set, maybe a second back off set, but a lot of times you're only doing 2, maybe 3 working sets per movement. And with that, because you're doing warm-up sets and your first working set is your heaviest set, you're doing quite a bit more weight than, say, like a high volume bodybuilder. So with this, you do gain strength. And then if you're doing things right, you should be progressing in strength over time. Now with this, the rep ranges, typically they're gonna be higher, very much higher than, say, a powerlifter. Because once again, strength isn't the main goal. You're really wanting to really increase tension on the muscle, and you do need a level of volume to put on, or to maximize hypertrophy. So, the rep ranges are unique to the individual, unique to the movement selection, all of that, but it can be anywhere from 6 to 10 reps. It can be all the way up to, 10 to 15 reps. You typically won't see higher than that with a high intensity bodybuilder, but every once in a while you will. But, the rep range is typically anywhere from 6 to 15 reps, depending on the movement and the individual. Then when you go to the power building side, and you're trying to maximize gaining strength and gaining muscle at the same time, this is where a lot of times the volume is going to be a little bit higher than bodybuilding, or high intensity bodybuilding. And the rep range isn't going to be as low as powerlifting. It's going to kind of be in that sweet spot. So that's where, if you've been watching my power building videos, my rep range, on the first movement, say on an incline bench press, is 4 to 6 reps. That's quite a bit lower than typically what most bodybuilders would do. Back in the day when I was just doing high intensity bodybuilding, usually my first set on incline press was like 8 to 12. But my first set is now 4 to 6. Then I go, second set would be 6 to 8, which, by the way, with bodybuilding, I would only do 2 sets. Now with powerbuilding, I'm doing 3. The third one is now 8 to 10. So one, I'm taking advantage of different rep schemes. One, trying to take still advantage of hypertrophy, but the focus very much is on the strength side. So what you have to think about with power building, there's no real set rules here with power building, because there's no competition for bodybuilding or power building. You've got powerlifting competitions, you have bodybuilding competitions. There's no competitions for power building. So it's really down to the individual of what their goal is. If they want to gain more strength, then they're probably going to do a little bit less volume. They're going to do lower rep ranges. If they're more on the hypertrophy side, they might do a little bit more volume with higher rep ranges. So it really depends where on the spectrum that individual falls. Where I've got it set right now is what I would consider pretty smack dab in the middle, and that goes along with my goals, which I'm going to get to at the end of this video. But I'm kind of in the middle, so I'm taking advantage still very much of some hypertrophy rep schemes, but also I'm taking very much advantage of some lower rep schemes that are going to go more towards power building. And then also goes to the movement selection. Good example with this is on one of my pull days, I have seal rows in place. Seal rows are a great movement for building very, very solid back strength. And while it will lead to hypertrophy, it's not the most ideal movement for back hypertrophy. It still will lead to some muscle, but it's not most ideal. So the whole point here is bodybuilding is what you do if you want to maximize hypertrophy, you want to maximize aesthetics, and then, whether you want to get on stage or not, if you're going to get on stage, you got to do bodybuilding. But with doing high intensity bodybuilding, where you might set up your split with, lower volume in the sense of not as many sets, but you're also pushing the intensity really hard, you're going to get a pretty decent level of strength. This is where it's easy for me to transition into power building now, because I have a very solid base level of strength from all the years of progressing up with high intensity bodybuilding. Power building is specifically for the person that's wanting to maximize both strength and hypertrophy at the same time. You're not going to, doing power building, you're not going to be the most impressive powerlifter, and you're not going to be the most impressive bodybuilder, but you absolutely can take advantage of incredible strength gains and incredible muscle gains doing power building. So this is built more for the person that doesn't have necessarily a competition focus, but they're trying to have really, really, really solid strength. And then with that, they're still trying to take advantage of, having mass and looking like they really lift, and having that really solid density, all that. So first off, I want to cover, before we move on, I want to cover, the difference between high volume bodybuilding and high intensity bodybuilding, because it does play over to the power building side as well. So I've noticed, and you can look this up for yourself anecdotally and just look at the styles of training of different bodybuilders. There typically is a difference in, guys that have really, really, they're really strong versus, just a high volume pump bodybuilder. And I'm not saying one is better than the other, but typically the ones that have massive strength, the high intensity ones, so like the Dorian Yates, that style of training leads to just more dense, grainier muscle look. It just, the muscle quality is slightly different. There's just a denser look, deeper muscle maturity. And some people don't prefer that. Some people prefer more of the high volume look and all of that. It's just two different looks. So with that, with power building, that is kind of what you're going to get out of it. And what I'm already noticing with power building is the density of the muscle is at a very, very, it's at a greater level. The other part of it too is with power building, especially with my split right now, I have more working sets in place and more work. I'm doing 6 days a week of training rather than 5, what I would do with high intensity bodybuilding. Because of that and the loads I'm under now, my metabolism was revved up even more than it was with high intensity bodybuilding. So for a bodybuilding purpose, that's not always the best thing. It's going to be harder to then now eat and fuel trying to gain as much maximal muscle as possible, versus now, it's easier for me to stay leaner. But if I was trying to really maximize the amount of size I could put on, this would only make things a little bit harder. But because of that, I'm also gaining strength at a very, very rapid pace. So this kind of, the differences of all of it, you got to think power building. Power building is kind of in the middle on the spectrum between powerlifting and bodybuilding. There's definitely some overlay with high intensity bodybuilding. It's very easy for a high intensity bodybuilder to transition over to power building. But it's really you trying to take advantage of both, crazy good strength gains with decent level hypertrophy gains. So, if you wanted to set this up for yourself, obviously, watch what I'm doing with this series right now. But, take what you're doing with high intensity bodybuilding and then maybe change up the movement selection to be a little bit more kind of your gritty, old school, raw strength movements. And then lower your rep schemes. Play in all rep schemes, but lower the rep schemes a little bit. If you typically play in the 8 to 12 rep range, maybe come down to 4 to 6, and then also have some sets that you might be in the 8 to 10 rep range. You're going to lower things, but you're still going to take advantage of some hypertrophy levels. Now with it, this is not advised by everybody, but I still take every working set to true all-out failure. I'm going to use deload weeks when I need them. But I'm still having that massive high intensity on every single movement. I think that's, especially with what I value as power building, that is part of it. It's all very, very high intensity. It's all, somewhat decently moderate to high volume with very, very high intensity under heavy loads. Now with that, kind of a downside to power building versus bodybuilding, both high intensity bodybuilding, high volume bodybuilding is, my body is feeling it. Recovery has to be absolutely on point, maxed out, because of the loads and the intensity you're under. But that's kind of all the differences. So now I've been asked, several times why I'm doing this. So on a physical reason, y'all know I don't have any interest in competing in bodybuilding anymore, and we're going to get into kind of more of the spiritual side of that in a second. But with it, physically, over the last year and a half since I retired from bodybuilding, I went through the running phase, kind of trying to figure out what is my style of training that I want and I really like. One, ever since I was young, I've always gravitated more towards lifting. It's what I'm more talented at. Even though I've done many bouts of a lot of running, I'm not a good runner. I've done it more for the mental component, and kind of the mental callousing I've gotten out of it, but I'm not a good runner. I am talented, or more talented, and gravitate more towards strength style. So I wanted to figure out, how could I take the movement styles I like, so lifting and all that, but also have something that, if I'm not tied to getting on a stage, what is something that I want physically? So physically, I had to think, what do I want? One, I want to still look like I lift. B, I want to get stronger. And that goes into the main part here is, I want to have my training now focused around more on functionality. And that's also why now I call this the functional power building split, because of the cardio, which we haven't talked about yet. The cardio I've got in place, plus my garage workouts, which are very more functional based. I want to be more functional than I was as a bodybuilder. And I want to have strength that, like, it's not as much just, even though I have a decent level of strength already, it's not just show muscle, it's I can be of service to others. It's definitely more of a usable training style. But I still have the look of looking like someone who lifts. Now, that leads into kind of the spiritual side. So if y'all followed, that, I've got through a pretty big spiritual journey and all of that. And along the entire way, before I even became an Orthodox Christian, all along the way, there was very much, when I started bodybuilding, a external gratification with it. There was very much like, I, trying to get the pro card. That was, a lot of that was for coaching and business reasons, but it was also, the external gratification on social media and all that. Or starting out, there was very much a, I wanted that external gratification of, look at how good I look, and all of that. Over the years, especially over the last 2 years, that really has transitioned away. The people close to me know that my social media, the part of my social media and the following and influence I really like is me being able to legitimately help other people, whether that's giving y'all knowledge. My coaching clients, a lot of my coaching clients are with me because we get on calls talking about, mindset. I help them through really hard times in their life, whether it's a breakup, something like that. My in-person clients, when we're taking rest periods, we're usually talking about life stuff. I really, really get a lot of, get gratification, I guess, from helping others. So that's the part of my social media I like. The part that I've learned to not despise, but really not look forward to is basically it tied to my look. So, I post my shirtless pictures and all that, but it's because I'm trapped somewhat into the algorithm. The algorithm, that's what it feeds off of, especially in the fitness industry. And so, if I had it my way, I wouldn't have to be posting any of that at all. And it would purely be just my training videos or mindset videos, or pictures on Instagram, all of that. And I'm trying to find the balance with this. If you guys see my Instagram, you can kind of see that the journey of how this is going. And this is very much a balancing act with the algorithm to make sure I still get the eyeballs, to help people, but and also my business. But then also I'm trying to do it as little as possible. So on a spiritual side, I can talk about this deeper in another video, but while I have nothing against people wanting to compete in bodybuilding and all of that, for me and for most bodybuilders I know, there's very much external validation reasons that it's tied to. Whether it's a sense of self-worth, whether it's for social media, just views and all of that. There's very much an external gratification side tied to it. With powerbuilding, there's none of that. Powerbuilding, yes, I still look like I lift and all of that. But with powerbuilding, the focus is very much, on one, being functional, and then two, allowing it to, one, I'm increasing my knowledge base to help my clients. This is a different training style for me. But then the strength aspect and the functionality aspect is very much more usable in life, and it's not tied as much to my look. So, that's kind of the surface of it. There's very much, deeper that goes into it. But, I got tired of, with the bodybuilding side of, essentially just be like, look at me, I don't really like that anymore. And I don't judge anybody that has that mindset or anything. Most of my coaching clients are bodybuilding clients. And I very much enjoy coaching bodybuilding. And I the other aspect to it too that people don't understand is take the look away out of it, take social media out of it. I would still be training pretty much the same way. When it came to high intensity bodybuilding, and I've talked about this a little bit in other videos, but it's a training style I love. Like, you take the look and all that away, I enjoy it because of the pain caves you go into, and just the grueling hard work that it is. And that kind of is now why I've gone over to powerbuilding, because powerbuilding is even more so that. Powerbuilding is deep, deep, deep pain caves, grueling work. Every day your body is really feeling it. But you're also seeing the positive effects come out of it. Like, the amount I've seen my body change in the last week, especially in strength gains, has been quite incredible. The amount I'm progressing up already after week 1 is pretty awesome. So these are all kind of reasons, for me, it's like, it's both a physical reason of, I want to be able to use my body better, be more functional, be stronger, plus have the freedom to train how I want, which fits within powerbuilding. And then on the spiritual side, the external gratification of, just look at me and look how I look with bodybuilding, especially as an Orthodox Christian, it wasn't setting right. And it wasn't setting right before I even converted over to Orthodox Christianity. It got really tired of, being tied to, just how I look and all of that. For me, I very much like being able to help people with training, with fitness, with health, with nutrition. And then, the people doing PEDs in a healthier, safer way. I know people are going to do it regardless. And so that's where, a lot of my coaching clients, they take PEDs, but at least I'm able to help them do it in a healthier, safer way, because they're going to do it regardless. So, that kind of ran over, but that's why, I love powerbuilding now. My whole focus now is not the stage to get up and just be like, look at me. It's also, very much performance related and performance for life. And then also, how can I be of service to others? But that's just kind of me getting that off my chest. But I hope y'all got something from this. I hope this kind of explained a little bit of why I'm doing powerbuilding versus bodybuilding. If you did, please go ahead and smash that like button, hit subscribe if you are already. God bless y'all, and have a great rest of your day.